If political careers had final boss levels, this mansion would unlock right at the end. After decades spent navigating courtrooms, Senate floors, and the White House, Kamala Harris has recently made a move that caught everyone off guard. She bought an $8 million Malibu stronghold that most people wouldn't even realize is there. This is not your typical beach house. This one is perched high above the Pacific, gated, low-key, and clearly designed for life after the spotlight fades. But what does a place like this actually look like from inside? Who lives around her? And what ultra-luxurious details made this place impossible to pass up? Let's take a true insider look. The $8 million cliffside secret. Imagine a 4,000 square foot cliffside hideaway where ocean spray meets heated pool, sauna, cold plunge, fire pit, private putting green and guest house, and all of this tucked behind a gated entrance you could almost sell as an NFT. Inside, there are wood-beamed ceilings, built-in speakers, skylights, and fireplaces that make the whole place feel like California sunshine wrapped in toasted oak. This is just a glimpse of what former Vice President Kamala Harris and her husband, Doug Emhoff, have quietly bought for around $8.15 million, with 4 bedrooms, 6 baths, panoramic Pacific views, and access to one of the coast's most coveted resident-only surf breaks. Now, before we dive deeper into the floor plans and private beach keys, let's talk where this slice of paradise actually sits, because Point Dume is far from your typical Malibu postcard. Forget the paparazzi snapshots of glass boxes teetering over sand dunes. Point Dume is more like Malibu with a PhD. It's a gated, cliff-perched enclave, which is about 63 acres in total and is home to fewer than 150 properties. There are no drive-through tourists and no accidental discoveries. You aren't passing through here on your way to lunch. You're here because someone invited you. But let me tell you something even more interesting. The secret sauce of Point Dume is not just the views. This place has quietly become one of Southern California's most reliable disaster hedges. During the 2018 Woolsey fire, which tore through 96,000 acres and erased more than 1,600 structures, Point Dume came through relatively unscathed. The same story repeated during the 2025 Palisades fire, when Brentwood and Pacific Palisades scrambled through evacuations. Native coastal scrub, constant ocean winds, and higher humidity, nature itself acts like a built-in defense system here. The first people to notice all that were investors. Post-fire, Point Dume property values climbed roughly 12 to 15%, outperforming much of Malibu. Scarcity plus survivability often tends to do that, and this is why Point Dume attracts a very specific demographic. Political figures transitioning out of office, tech founders who prefer relevance without exposure, financiers who value stability over spectacle. Luxury does show up here, but it behaves differently. So when a national figure with more eyes on her than most Hollywood A-listers buys something here, it definitely sends a message. This is more than just a celebrity toy. It's a choice real estate with teeth. And once you see Point Dume this way, the way Harris bought her home starts to feel like a message in itself. The crazy off-market deal. Here's one of many kickers about this jaw-dropping purchase. Kamala Harris didn't scroll listings or tour a dozen properties with cameras trailing behind. This deal was closed in December 2025, quietly, off-market, and without ever touching the MLS. The purchase price came in at $8.15 million, handled discreetly by Chris Cortazzo of Compass. If you know Malibu real estate, you know Cortazzo isn't just an agent, but a gatekeeper. His reputation is built on managing transactions for people who already understand discretion and demand it as part of the package. So, when he's involved, the assumption is simple: fewer leaks, fewer intermediaries, and fewer variables. The home itself sits on a small, almost anonymous side street. From the curb, it barely announces itself. No dramatic driveway reveal. No architectural chest thumping. Then you move through the property, step toward the rear decks, and the Pacific opens up in layers, a narrow sliver expanding into a full horizon. It's a slow reveal, and it feels intentional, like a house designed to reward familiarity rather than impress strangers. Financially, the structure reinforces the same philosophy. There's no recorded mortgage, no liens, and no visible leverage. This was effectively a cash-equivalent purchase, signaling decisiveness and insulation from interest rate drama. Even the price per square foot, roughly $2,000 to $2,100, lands below Point Dume's typical luxury average, where newer trophy builds push well past $2,400 per square foot. Now let me tell you the part most people miss. Off-market deals are less about saving money and more about controlling the narrative. There are no conventional bidding wars or public comps anchoring future value. No paparazzi photos turning a purchase into a spectacle either. For someone exiting one of the most scrutinized political roles on the planet, that restraint is strategy instead of coincidence. All in all, this purchase was a pre-cleared transaction, the kind that happens when both sides know exactly what they're doing and want it done cleanly. And here's the unexpected twist. By Malibu standards, the house itself doesn't shout wealth. It's all about maturity, and that design choice tells an even deeper story. A mansion that chose restraint over spectacle. In a zip code where $20 million mega compounds compete for attention like peacocks, Kamala Harris's Point Dume home takes a different route entirely. Built in 1979 and spanning about 4,000 square feet, it's substantial without being theatrical. 4 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, 2 stories, and a generous 0.75-acre blufftop lot. Large, yes, but calibrated. This is a house designed around orientation instead of intimidation. Bluff positioning ensures ocean views from multiple rooms, but setbacks and landscaping keep neighboring sightlines at bay. Privacy here doesn't rely on walls. It relies on distance and elevation. You feel removed without feeling sealed off, which is a subtle but powerful distinction. Step inside, and the architecture leans into warmth and continuity. Exposed wood-beamed ceilings add height without echo. Skylights pull daylight deep into the home, changing the mood hour by hour. Floor-to-ceiling French windows frame the Pacific like a living mural, reminding you constantly where you are without overwhelming the space. A central gas fireplace anchors the main living area, offering gravity in a layout that could otherwise drift too airy. Even the technology choices reflect restraint. A whole-home audio system exists, but it's integrated, invisible, designed to support daily life rather than announce itself. This isn't a house built for tours or magazine spreads. It's built for long mornings, extended dinners, and quiet decompression after very loud careers. And this is exactly what settled wealth looks like. Not arrival wealth, and certainly not proof-of-concept wealth. It's settled wealth that prioritizes light, flow, defensibility, and livability over square footage headlines. Would you believe that in Point Dume, a home's long-term performance matters more than its wow factor? That's the lens this property fits into. It signals someone thinking about how a home behaves over decades, structurally, emotionally, politically. And while the interior sets the tone, the real strategy emerges once you step outside, where the amenities stop being decorative and start becoming intentional. The backyard that functions like a private resort. At some point, luxury stops being about showing people what you have and starts being about designing a place that quietly works for you every single day. That shift is written all over the outdoor layout of this Point Dume property, where the backyard doesn't behave like a party venue so much as a carefully tuned recovery campus disguised as a coastal oasis. The Infinity Edge pool sits right at the visual fault line between land and ocean, heated year-round and positioned so the water appears to dissolve straight into the Pacific. It's dramatic without being theatrical, the kind of feature you appreciate more on a quiet Tuesday morning than at a crowded gathering. Nearby, the in-ground spa stays temperature-controlled regardless of season, making it less of a novelty and more of a nightly ritual, especially once the coastal air cools down after sunset. A fire pit lounge anchors the space, naturally shielded by the bluff's orientation so wind doesn't steal the warmth. Around it, the landscaping tells a story of intention rather than decoration. Native coastal sage scrub, drought-tolerant succulents, and low-combustion plantings keep the property aligned with fire resilience rather than visual excess. Even the manicured turf zones are engineered for drainage and low maintenance, because nothing about this space suggests someone interested in weekend yard stress. Then there's the wellness loop, which quietly raises the stakes. A professionally installed cold plunge, plumbed and integrated rather than improvised, sits alongside an infrared sauna tucked into the bluff for privacy and efficiency. This isn't influencer wellness. It's the kind of setup people commit to because they actually use it. Add in a regulation-grade, private-putting green with resort-level contouring, and suddenly the backyard starts resembling a high-end retreat where routine matters more than novelty. Doug Emhoff's fingerprints are easy to spot here. Locals noticed him jogging around Point Dume even before the move fully settled, and the converted garage gym reinforces that same pattern. Full wall mirrors, sprung rubber flooring, a turf lane, free weights, cardio machines. It's a serious, repeat-use space, not a once-a-month indulgence. A detached one-bedroom guest house rounds things out, complete with its own bath and kitchenette. It's flexible enough for family visits, extended stays, or security overflow, reinforcing the theme that runs through every feature here. Function first, comfort always. And when you compare this to what they left behind, the logic becomes even clearer. From Brentwood to the Bluffs, a strategic upgrade. Kamala's previous Brentwood mansion served its purpose beautifully, and in many ways, it represented a very specific phase of life. Purchased by Doug Emhoff in 2012 for $2.7 million and now valued around $5 million, the 3,500 square foot home sat on a modest 0.3-acre lot and carried the charm of its 1948 build. It offered a backyard pool, a rooftop deck, and that classic urban-adjacent rhythm where proximity mattered more than seclusion. Brentwood is about movement. It's close to power centers, close to media, close to the kind of daily motion that defines active political life. It's also visible, busy, and increasingly exposed, particularly as wildfire evacuation zones crept closer and traffic density kept rising. That environment makes sense when you're operating in real time, juggling appearances, meetings, and constant access. On the other hand, Point Dume represents a different chapter altogether. The Malibu move increases land size by roughly 50%, elevates the home onto a bluff with built-in fire resilience, and places everything behind gates with limited ingress points. Aerial exposure drops. Street-level curiosity fades. The pace slows down in a way that feels deliberate rather than isolating. This wasn't a play for more square footage or flashier amenities. It was about becoming harder to reach, harder to disrupt, and harder to evacuate in a crisis. Natural buffers replace emergency plans. Distance replaces walls. Silence replaces background noise. Would you believe that in some elite circles, the most valuable upgrade isn't what you add, but what you remove? Less traffic. Fewer neighbors. Fewer reasons for people to pass by. That's the real luxury here. So, while Brentwood was about access, Point Dume is about endurance. One supports ascent and visibility, the other supports longevity and control. And together, they trace a very clean line through different seasons of power. And that line doesn't start in Malibu, but stretches much further back than most critics ever acknowledge. The wealth arc people forget. The Malibu mansion didn't appear out of nowhere, even if it makes for an easy headline. Kamala Harris's real estate story reads less like a sudden splurge and more like a long, steady climb, marked by timing, appreciation, and patience. Back in 2004, she purchased a loft in San Francisco for around $489,000, a move that looks almost quaint by today's standards, but reflects early confidence in urban property during a pivotal moment in the city's growth. Later came Washington, D.C., where a condo bought for roughly $1.775 million eventually sold for about $1.85 million. These weren't flashy plays, they were sensible, well-timed footholds in markets that reward consistency. Career income followed a predictable public service arc. A Senate salary of $174,000 gave way to the vice presidential salary of $235,000, neither of which explains Malibu on its own. The real leverage came after. Book advances, speaking fees, media appearances. The post office economy that quietly reshapes balance sheets for former power players. Doug Emhoff's long-standing legal career, complete with partnership-level earnings, adds another stable pillar to the equation. Combined net worth estimates hover between $4 and $8 million, skewing heavily toward assets rather than liquid flash. That matters, because asset-heavy wealth behaves differently. It appreciates, it compounds, it waits. This pattern shows up again and again among political elites. Obama's Martha's Vineyard purchase, Pelosi's expansive property portfolio, Biden's Delaware holdings. These aren't pivots, they're capstones. Final chapters in long accumulation stories that reward patience more than bravado. Seen through that lens, the Malibu purchase feels inevitable rather than provocative. Which is exactly why the criticism didn't focus on the money itself. Instead, it zeroed in on the coastline and what that symbolism represents, opening the door to the most contentious part of this story: climate, coastlines, and the hypocrisy debate. Now let's talk about the part everyone jumped to first because, honestly, pretending this conversation doesn't exist would be silly. The moment news of the Malibu purchase broke, the word hypocrisy started doing laps on cable news. Climate hawk buys oceanfront mansion. Cue the dramatic music. Kamala Harris has spent years speaking plainly about climate change. Sea level rise, coastal displacement, extreme weather. She's framed it as an existential issue more times than anyone can count. So when photos of a bluff-top Malibu estate surfaced, critics treated it like a gotcha moment wrapped in a Zillow listing. Fox News even baptized the place with a nickname, Kamalago, borrowing the same playbook they used for Obama's Martha's Vineyard home, and of course, Trump's gold-plated Mar-a-Lago. But here's where the conversation gets more interesting, and frankly, more honest. Climate risk isn't a single flat map where all coastlines behave the same way. NOAA and USGS projections do warn that up to 75% of California's sandy beaches could erode by 2100 under high-emission scenarios. That's real data. What rarely makes the Chiron is how differently a rocky bluff behaves compared to a low-lying beachfront lot. Point Dume sits roughly 100 feet above sea level, perched on a solid bluff rather than shifting sand, which materially changes near-term exposure. The erosion profile here moves slower, more predictably, and well beyond the time horizon most people plan their daily lives around. Then there's fire, which tends to get overshadowed in these debates. Point Dume's native scrub landscaping, minimal tree canopy, ocean humidity, and consistent coastal winds create a natural buffer that already proved its value during both the 2018 Woolsey Fire and the more recent Palisades Fire. While other neighborhoods evacuated, this peninsula held its ground. Add in details like tankless water heaters and drought-tolerant landscaping, and the picture sharpens. Public climate messaging often focuses on century-scale scenarios. Elite buyers, on the other hand, tend to optimize for 30 to 50-year livability windows. Same data, different decision frame. In short, public policy manages collective risk while private decisions manage personal exposure. And once you see it that way, the neighbors start to matter a lot more. The neighbors tell the real story. If houses could gossip, this one would casually mention who lives nearby and let that do the talking instead of bragging about more square footage. Point Dume doesn't operate like a celebrity zip code where red carpets and paparazzi form an ecosystem. It behaves more like a quiet convergence point for people who already finished their loud chapters. Just down the road, Mark Andreessen, founder of Andreessen Horowitz, steers billions in venture capital and political influence. Sergey Brin, Google co-founder, favors privacy maximalist real estate choices that all but disappear behind gates and geography. Laureen Powell-Jobs operates Emerson Collective from a position that blends philanthropy, media, and policy reach on a massive scale. Then there's Sean Penn, whose activism often takes him into conflict zones rather than film premieres, and Julia Roberts, who has quietly maintained a Point Dume compound for years without turning it into a spectacle. Owen Wilson and Gerard Butler round out the list, both known for keeping a low profile despite very public careers. Notice the pattern? This isn't about Hollywood proximity. It's about power adjacency. Tech capital, political legacy, media influence, and activism all intersect here without needing to announce themselves. The shared value is controlled visibility. Influence stays intact, exposure stays optional. Point Dume functions almost like a decompression chamber for relevance. Power doesn't vanish here, it recalibrates. Deals still happen, conversations still matter. They just happen over morning walks and quiet dinners instead of microphones. For someone exiting one of the most visible roles on the planet, that environment makes a lot of sense. You don't abandon the map, you step off the spotlight, which brings us to the real meaning of the house itself. How Kamala turned Flex into a settlement. Here's the part that ties everything together. This Malibu mansion isn't a victory lap, and it doesn't feel like an escape either. It reads more like a settlement, a carefully chosen place where momentum gives way to permanence. Every signal points in that direction. The off-market acquisition avoided bidding wars and press cycles entirely. The gated peninsula layers privacy on top of geography. The fire-resilient location favors survival over spectacle. The wellness-focused design emphasizes routine, recovery, and longevity rather than entertaining an audience. Even the scale tells the story. At roughly 4,000 square feet, this home sits comfortably below the mega compounds nearby, almost as if Restraint was part of the brief. The neighbors reinforce the theme. Influence remains within reach, but attention stays at arm's length. Relevance without noise. Presence without performance. And maybe that's the most revealing part of all. Some houses are built to announce success. They sparkle, they dominate, they demand acknowledgement. Others quietly absorb it, holding everything steady once the chase ends. This one does the latter. It doesn't argue, it doesn't explain. It simply exists, perched above the Pacific, designed to last through weather cycles, news cycles, and political seasons alike. In a way, that makes it the most honest chapter of the story. Not a statement about ambition, but a reflection of arrival. And that, more than the price tag or the view, is why this house matters. So this was a detailed look inside Kamala Harris's newly bought $8 million Malibu mansion that got everyone talking. What aspect of this property did you like the most? Let us know in the comments, and for more such peeks into the lives of the rich, take a look at global status.